Commander Alan Frost stood at the viewport of the USS Solaris watching as the massive Vexari ship approached. His heart beat faster, but his face remained calm. Today, humans would meet aliens for the first time. Real aliens. "Sir, the Vexari delegation requests permission to board," said Communications Officer Lily Daniels. Her voice was steady, but Alan could see the excitement in her eyes. "Permission granted," Alan replied. "Have the welcome team assemble in docking. Bay 3. The USS Solaris was the pride of Earth's fleet. Built for deep space exploration, it had instead become humanity's first diplomatic vessel. Its mission had changed the moment the Vexari signal had been detected 6 months ago. Alan straightened his uniform and walked toward the docking bay. Chief Science Officer Gregory Martinez fell in step beside him. "Ready to make history, Commander?" Gregory asked. "As ready as anyone can be," Alan said. "What's your assessment of these Vexari based on our communications?" Gregory frowned slightly. "They're advanced, logical, and seem to value efficiency above all else. Their messages were precise, with no cultural references or emotional content. Just facts and coordinates." Alan nodded. "So we're dealing with Mr. Spock times 1,000. "That might be a generous comparison, sir," Gregory said. At least Spock was half human. The welcome team gathered in the docking bay, 12 of Earth's finest representing different countries' disciplines and backgrounds. The sound of airlocks engaging echoed through the chamber. Alan took a deep breath. This was it. The doors slid open, revealing 5 tall, slender beings. Their skin was pale blue with a slight shimmer, almost like fish scales. They had no hair and their eyes were large and completely black. They wore simple gray uniforms with no visible rank or decoration. The tallest Vexari stepped forward. I am Ambassador Zortek of the Vexari Conclave. We greet the human species and acknowledge your achievement in reaching a level of technology that warrants contact." Alan stepped forward and smiled. "Ambassador Zortek, I am Commander Alan Frost of Earth. On behalf of all humanity, we welcome you to the USS Solaris and look forward to peaceful exchange between our peoples." He extended his hand, then remembered the briefing on Vexari biology. They preferred not to touch other species. Alan smoothly changed the gesture to a respectful nod. Zortek tilted his head slightly. "Your ship designation is curious. You name a vessel after a star?" "Yes," Alan replied. "In our culture, stars often represent hope and guidance." "Curious," Zortek said. "Stars are fusion reactors. Naming a vessel after one assigns emotional significance to an astronomical object. Inefficient." Alan's smile became a bit more forced. "Perhaps we can discuss our different perspectives during the diplomatic talks." "That would be acceptable," Zortek said. "We are prepared to begin immediately." The human team led the Vexari delegates to the conference room prepared for this historic meeting. The aliens moved with precise economical movements. They did not look around in curiosity at the ship. They did not chat among themselves. They simply followed, observed, and analyzed. In the conference room, the team sat across from each other. Alan introduced each member of his team. The Vexari did the same, though each alien's role was described by function rather than personal achievement. "Let us discuss terms of potential alliance," Zortek began without preamble. "The Vexari Conclave has identified Earth as a potential trading partner and strategic ally against the Draconian Collective, which threatens expansion in this sector." Alan blinked at the directness but quickly recovered. "We're certainly interested in peaceful trade and mutual defense. However, we'd first like to learn more about your people, your culture, and your values." An inefficient approach. "But we will accommodate," Zortek replied. "The Vexari evolved on Takaris Prime, a planet with 1.3 times Earth gravity and a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Our civilization is 30,000 Earth years old. We value logic, efficiency, technological advancement, and survival. We do not engage in art, recreation, or other non-productive activities." The bluntness of the response caught several human delegates off guard. Alan glanced at Gregory, who raised an eyebrow slightly. Thank you, Ambassador, Alan said. Earth. Values include freedom, compassion, diversity, and the pursuit of knowledge. We believe emotional connections and creative expression are essential to our well-being. Zortek's face remained impassive. We have observed this in your transmissions. It is puzzling why an intelligent species would prioritize emotional responses, which cloud judgment and reduce efficiency. Before Alan could respond, Lily's communication device beeped. She checked it and her face went pale. She stood abruptly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice suddenly tight. "I need to step out." Alan nodded to her, concern evident in his eyes. As Lily left the room, he turned back to the Vexari. "Please continue, Ambassador." 10 minutes later, as they discussed potential trade resources, Lily returned. Alan noticed immediately that her eyes were red and her cheeks wet. She had been crying. She took her seat quietly, but the Vexari had already noticed. "Your crew member appears to be leaking fluid from her optical organs," Zortek observed. "Is this a medical emergency?" The room fell silent. Alan looked at Lily, who nodded slightly, giving him permission to explain. "Officer Daniels just received news that her father has passed away, died, on Earth," Alan explained gently. "The fluid you observe is tears. Humans produce tears when experiencing strong emotions, particularly grief." The Vexari delegates looked at each other, communicating something Alan couldn't interpret. "You deliberately allow your biological functions to be disrupted by information?" asked another Vexari, identified as Chief Scientist Kelvar. "This seems evolutionarily disadvantageous." Gregory leaned forward. "Actually, emotional responses like grief are part of our social bonding. Tears signal to others that someone needs support and strengthen group cohesion." "Fascinating," Kelvar said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. "The Vexari eliminated such responses 20,000 years ago. We found them inefficient." Zortek studied Lily with clinical interest. "So these tears are a deliberate evolutionary adaptation, not a defect?" "They're part of what makes us human," Alan said firmly. "A curious design choice," Zortek replied. "It appears your species prioritized social bonding over operational efficiency. This explains much about your slower technological development compared to the Vexari." Alan felt a flash of anger, but kept his expression neutral. "Different evolutionary paths lead to different strengths, Ambassador. Our emotional capacity drives our creativity, art, and many of our scientific breakthroughs." "An untested hypothesis," Zortek responded. "Nevertheless, we find your species technologically adequate for alliance purposes, despite these peculiarities." The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Technical details were exchanged, preliminary agreements were drafted, and a tentative alliance framework began to take shape. Yet through it all, Alan couldn't shake the feeling that the Vexari saw humans as barely worthy allies, interesting, perhaps useful, but fundamentally flawed. As the Vexari delegation prepared to return to their ship, Zortek approached Alan. "Privately, Commander Frost, we find your species unusual but potentially valuable. The Vexari will proceed with alliance negotiations." "I'm pleased to hear that, Ambassador," Alan replied. "However," Zortek continued, "we recommend your species work to control these emotional displays. In the wider galaxy, such weaknesses are often exploited." Alan met the alien's black eyes steadily. "What you see as weakness, Ambassador, we see as strength. Perhaps in time you'll understand why." Zortek blinked slowly. "An interesting perspective. We shall observe and evaluate." Later, in his private quarters, Alan recorded his log entry. First contact with the Vexari complete. Their technology could greatly benefit Earth, but their emotional detachment poses significant challenges for future relations. They see our emotions as defects rather than assets. They particularly seemed puzzled by our tears. He paused, thinking of Lily and the other humans who had lost so much while serving far from home. "They mock what they don't understand," he continued softly. "Perhaps someday they'll learn that our tears, our humanity, are not our weakness, but our greatest strength." 6 months had passed since the first meeting with the Vexari. The alliance was moving forward, but slowly. Both sides remained cautious, studying each other from a distance. Lieutenant Olivia West looked out the window of the transport ship as it approached Takaris Prime, the Vexari homeworld. The planet glowed with a bluish-green light, its surface covered with geometric patterns visible even from space. "It's beautiful," she said to Dr. Paul Harris, who sat beside her, "but in an artificial way. According to the briefing materials, they've been reshaping their planet for thousands of years," Paul replied. He was a xenopsychologist sent to study Vexari social structures. "Everything is designed for maximum efficiency." Olivia nodded. As the leader of the human delegation for the new cultural exchange program, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Commander Frost had personally selected her for this mission. "Remember," he had told her, "they don't understand our emotions, but that doesn't make them wrong or us wrong, just different." The transport landed on a perfectly circular platform. When the doors opened, Olivia was struck by the cool, perfectly regulated air. The sky above was pale purple, and the buildings around them were tall, sleek, and identical. A Vexari approached. "I am Guide Renval. I will facilitate your cultural exchange experience." The Vexari's voice was flat, without any welcome or warmth. "Thanks. You for hosting us," Olivia said with a smile. "We're excited to learn about your world." Renval blinked slowly. "Excitement is unnecessary for learning, but we acknowledge your greeting custom." The human delegation followed Renval to their quarters, a white cube-shaped building with basic furnishings. Everything was functional but completely without decoration. "Rest cycle begins in 4 hours," Renval informed them. "Tomorrow's educational tour begins at the first light period." After the Vexari left, one of the younger members of the delegation, Science Officer Eric Powell, flopped onto his assigned bed. "Well, that was cold. Do you think they ever smile?" "I don't think they can," Paul said, unpacking his research equipment. "From what I've gathered, they've engineered emotional responses out of their species. They consider them inefficient." Olivia looked around at the stark room. "Let's keep an open mind. We're here to learn, not judge." The next morning, the delegation was led through the city. Everything was built with perfect symmetry. Vexari moved with purpose, never stopping to chat or even look at each other. There was no art on the walls, no music in the air, no smell of food cooking. "This is our reproduction center," Renval said, showing them a clinical-looking building. Inside, they watched as Vexari scientists combined genetic material in labs. "Where are the parents?" Eric asked, looking around. "Contributors provide genetic material," Renval explained. "Young are developed in artificial wombs and then raised in education centers. This is most efficient." "But what about family bonds?" Olivia asked. "Don't the children need love and emotional connection?" Renval tilted his head. "Such attachments are unnecessary for development. Our young require only knowledge and skills." They next visited an education center. Young Vexari sat at terminals, absorbing information. They didn't play or laugh. They simply learned. "Our system produces fully functional adults in 16 Earth years," Renval stated proudly. "Your system requires nearly twice that time." Paul took careful notes. "But what about creativity? How do you innovate?" "We have dedicated problem-solving teams that use logical processes to improve existing systems," Renval answered. "Random inspiration is inefficient." That evening, back in their quarters, the human delegation discussed what they had seen. "It's like they've removed everything that makes life worth living," Eric said. "No love, no family, no art, no joy." "From their perspective, they've removed unnecessary distractions," Paul reminded him. "They value different things." "I wonder if they're happy," Olivia mused. "I don't think they consider happiness relevant," Paul replied. The next day, Olivia decided to try an experiment. She had brought examples of human culture to share. In a meeting with Vexari scientists, she displayed paintings, played music, and showed videos of human celebrations. This painting was created by an artist who had just lost her child, Olivia explained, showing an image of a sorrowful mother figure with tears streaming down her face. She channeled her grief into this work. Crenmore, the lead Vexari scientist, studied the painting carefully. You deliberately create representations of neurochemical reactions? For what purpose? To express what we feel, Olivia explained. To share our experiences with others, to process our emotions. Inefficient, Crenmore concluded. Your species wastes resources on representations of chemical reactions in your neural pathways. This explains why your technological development lags behind ours. Olivia felt a flash of anger but kept her voice calm. We believe these expressions help us understand ourselves and each other better. They're part of what makes us human. A curious priority, Crenmore said. Later that week, the delegation visited the Vexari archives. Paul was excited to learn about their history. According to these records, he told Olivia quietly, they weren't always like this. There are references to ancient Vexari music and art. Something changed about 20,000 years ago. What happened? Olivia asked. I'm not sure yet, Paul said, but they made a deliberate choice to become what they are now. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Vexari delegation was having its own cultural experience. Commander Frost received regular reports that concerned him. The Vexari found human cities chaotic and human behavior unpredictable. They were particularly disturbed by emotional displays, laughter, tears, anger, affection. After 2 weeks, on Takara's Prime, Olivia's team prepared their final presentation. They decided to focus on how emotions influenced human achievement. Throughout our history, Olivia explained to the assembled Vexari scientists, our greatest breakthroughs often came from emotional drives. Love of family inspired safety innovations. Fear drove us to develop medicines. Curiosity pushed us to explore space. Compassion helped us build fair societies. The Vexari listened politely but appeared unconvinced. After the presentation, Crenmore approached Olivia. Your species is puzzling. You deliberately maintain these emotional responses despite their clear disadvantages. What disadvantages do you see? Olivia asked. Your grief incapacitates you. Your anger leads to conflict. Your love creates bias. Your fear causes irrational behaviors. Crenmore listed these as simple facts. And yet we built starships, Olivia said with a small smile. We created music and art. We formed families and communities. We're different, not inferior. Crenmore was silent for a moment. A hypothesis worth considering. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Paul shared his findings with Olivia. The Vexari faced a devastating war 20,000 years ago, he explained. They believed their emotions made them vulnerable, so they engineered them out of their genome. They gave up feeling to survive, Olivia said softly. Yes, Paul agreed. And now they don't even know what they've lost. On the transport ship home, Olivia recorded her report for Commander Frost. The Vexari see us as promising but flawed allies. They consider our emotions to be evolutionary weaknesses. However, I believe there's more to this story. Dr. Harris has found evidence that they once had emotions but chose to remove them. This may explain their fascination with us, despite their dismissal of our ways. Perhaps deep down they sense something is missing in their perfectly efficient world. A year had passed since the first contact with the Vexari. The alliance was holding, but tensions remained. Humans found the Vexari cold and difficult to understand. The Vexari found humans unpredictable and overly emotional. Admiral Alan Frost, recently promoted, sat in his office on the USS Solaris reviewing reports. The door chimed. Enter, he called. Gregory Martinez walked in, now wearing the uniform of a science director. Admiral, we've received an urgent message from the Vexari. Alan looked up. What is it? A massive solar flare from Proxima Centauri is threatening their colony on Proxima 4. They've asked for our help with evacuation. Alan stood immediately. How bad is it? Very bad. The flare will hit in less than 12 hours. The Vexari ships in the area are having trouble with the ion storm that's already started. They can't evacuate everyone in time. Set course for Proxima 4, maximum speed. Alert the USS Horizon, the USS Galaxy, and the USS Pioneer. We'll need all available ships. 6 hours later, the 4 human vessels arrived at Proxima 4. The planet glowed red under the light of its angry star. Ion storms rippled through space, disrupting communications and navigation systems. Vexari Command Vessel, this is Admiral Frost of the USS Solaris. We're here to assist with evacuation efforts. The screen flickered, showing a Vexari official. Admiral Frost, this is Coordinator Velnir. We acknowledge your arrival. The situation has worsened. The flare will hit in 5 hours and 43 minutes. We have 23,000 colonists remaining on the surface. We'll start transport immediately, Alan said. Where do you need us most? The northern continent has 3 major settlements still being evacuated. Your vessels should focus there. Our ships will handle the southern regions. The evacuation began immediately. Human and Vexari ships flew through the increasingly dangerous atmosphere, fighting against time and the growing ion storm. On the surface, Lieutenant Kevin Sanderson led a team of 12 rescue workers. They had landed near a Vexari educational facility that housed 500 young. Life signs are strong but scattered throughout the building, Kevin reported, checking his scanner. The structure has been damaged by preliminary tremors. We have 4 hours before the flare hits, his second-in-command, Officer Ben Garcia, reminded him. Vexari ships are having trouble landing in this area due to the magnetic disturbances. Then we do this the hard way, Kevin said. Teams of 2. Standard search and rescue pattern. Let's move. The teams entered the building. The young Vexari were gathered in central rooms, sitting silently despite the danger. Their adult supervisors were trying to maintain order, but several sections of the building had collapsed, trapping some of the children. We're here to help, Kevin told the lead Vexari educator. We need to get everyone to our transport ships immediately. The Vexari studied him with those large black eyes. We have calculated that not all can be evacuated in time. We were sorting by genetic value to determine priority. Kevin stared in shock. That's not how we do things. We're taking everyone. Inefficient, the Vexari stated. Some genetic lines are more valuable to the future of our species. All lives are valuable, Kevin replied firmly. Now please help us organize an evacuation. 2 lines, fastest moving first. While the main group was led to the transports, Kevin and 3 others went deeper into the damaged building. They found 22 young Vexari trapped behind a collapsed wall. The only way through was a small opening near the floor. I'll go, Kevin said, removing his equipment belt. I'm the smallest. The building's becoming unstable, Ben warned. You'll have maybe 10 minutes before the next tremor. Kevin nodded and squeezed through the opening. Inside, he found the young Vexari, huddled together. Their faces showed no fear, but they had grouped together instinctively. I'm here to help you, Kevin said, forcing a smile. We need to get you out quickly. One by one, he helped the young Vexari through the small opening. The last one was trapped, under a fallen beam. Ben, I need help, Kevin called. One child is pinned down. Ben squeezed halfway through the opening. Can you lift the beam? Kevin tried, but it was too heavy. Not alone. Ben pushed himself all the way through, tearing his suit in the process. Together then, the 2 men positioned themselves on either side of the beam. On 3, Kevin said. 1, 2, 3. They lifted with all their strength. The beam moved just enough for the young Vexari to crawl free. As they did, the building shuddered violently. Go, Kevin shouted, pushing the child toward Ben. Get out now. Ben helped the young Vexari through the opening, then turned back for Kevin. But it was too late. The ceiling collapsed, catching Kevin in the shoulder and leg. Kevin cried out in pain. Ben rushed to his side, trying to free him from the debris. Leave me, Kevin gasped. Get the children to safety. Not happening, Ben growled, straining to lift the debris. No one gets left behind. Outside, a group of Vexari observers watched as the human rescue teams worked tirelessly. They noted how the humans showed no logical pattern to their efforts, sometimes taking greater risks for smaller groups, making decisions based on something other than efficiency. When Ben finally emerged from the building, supporting a badly injured Kevin, two other team members rushed forward to help. Kevin was bleeding heavily and tears of pain streaked his dust-covered face. "The last child?" Kevin asked weakly. "Safe on the transport," someone assured him. The senior Vexari observer, who Kevin didn't recognize, approached them. "Your actions were not logical. You risked 2 lives to save 1. Ben, still supporting Kevin, glared at the alien. "That's what humans do." As the final transports lifted off, the human rescue teams had successfully evacuated all 23,000 colonists. 2 human crew members had been seriously injured and several others had minor injuries. The USS Pioneer had sustained damage to its port nacelle while navigating the ion storm. Back on the USS Solaris, Admiral Frost met with a delegation of Vexari officials in the conference room. "Your assistance was timely," said Velnir, the Vexari coordinator. "The colony would have suffered significant losses without human intervention. We're glad we could help," Alan replied. "That's what allies do. However," Velnir continued, "we observed concerning behaviors among your rescue teams. Your personnel consistently took unnecessary risks. They prioritized individuals over efficiency. They made emotional rather than logical decisions." Alan leaned forward. "Those emotional decisions saved all 23,000 of your people." "A fortunate outcome, but not an optimal methodology," Velnir stated. "We particularly noted the incident at the educational facility. 2 of your crew risked their lives for a single young who was not even of high genetic value to our species." Alan felt a surge of anger but kept his voice steady. "We don't calculate the value of lives, Coordinator. Every person deserves to be saved regardless of their genetics." "Why?" the Vexari asked, genuinely curious. "Because that's what empathy means," Alan explained. "We feel what others feel. We care about their suffering. It drives us to help, even at risk to ourselves." "An evolutionary disadvantage," another Vexari commented. But Alan noticed something interesting. Crenmore, the scientist who had spent the most time with humans during the cultural exchange, remained silent, watching the interaction with unusual intensity. Later, as the Vexari prepared to depart, Crenmore approached Alan privately. "Your lieutenant, Sanderson," the Vexari said quietly. "He cried when he was injured." "Yes," Alan acknowledged. "Pain often brings tears." Yet he continued to ask about the child he had saved despite his own distress. "Of course," Alan said. "He cared more about the child's safety than his own pain." Crenmore was silent for a long moment. "Curious. Perhaps there is something about your emotions we do not yet understand." As the Vexari ships departed, Alan watched from the viewport. He thought about what had happened on Proxima 4. The Vexari had all the technology needed to save their colony, but they had been prepared to sacrifice some to save others, based on cold calculations of genetic value. Humans, with their inefficient emotions, had refused to leave anyone behind. And in the end, everyone had been saved. "They still don't understand," Alan murmured to himself. "But maybe they're starting to wonder." 2 months after the Proxima 4 evacuation, Admiral Alan Frost received a message that made his stomach tighten. The Vexari High Council had invited humanity to join their Galactic Consortium, a group of advanced species that controlled much of the nearby star systems. This should have been good news. Instead, it filled Alan with dread. "They want us to undergo emotional regulation procedures," he told his senior staff, gathered in the USS Solaris conference room. "That's their condition for our membership." "Emotional regulation?" Gregory Martinez asked. "What does that mean exactly?" "They want us to modify our brain chemistry," Alan explained, "to reduce our emotional responses, make us more like them." Lily, Daniel's now communications director, shook her head. "They still think our emotions are a weakness. The Earth government has already refused," Alan said. But tensions are high. The Vexari don't understand our refusal. They see it as irrational. Earth, Dr. Paul Harris was working late in his laboratory. Since returning from Takaris Prime, he had been studying the ancient Vexari artifacts and texts that the cultural exchange team had been allowed to bring back. Something bothered him about the Vexari history. His computer chimed with an incoming message from Lieutenant Olivia West. Found something interesting in the deep archives. Call me. Paul immediately placed the call. Olivia's face appeared on his screen, her expression excited. I've been going through those data crystals we brought back, she said without preamble. Most of it is technical information, but I found something hidden in a subdirectory. Old files, heavily encrypted. What did you find? Paul asked. Art, Paul. Vexari art, music, poetry, from before their great transformation. I'm sending you the files now. Paul opened the files as they arrived. His eyes widened. The images showed colorful, flowing designs unlike anything in modern Vexari culture. The music was strange but beautiful with complex harmonies. This changes everything, he whispered. They weren't always emotionless. There's more, Olivia said. I found references to a project called Restoration. It's current, Paul. Some Vexari scientists are secretly working to restore their emotional capacity. Paul sat back, stunned. We need to tell Admiral Frost immediately. While this discovery was being made on Earth, Captain Nicole Frost, Admiral Frost's wife and commander of the USS Horizon, received an emergency signal from a Vexari science vessel near the edge of explored space. They're under attack, her communications officer reported, from another Vexari ship. That can't be right, Nicole said, frowning. The Vexari don't fight among themselves. The message is clear, Captain. They're requesting immediate assistance. Set course and go to maximum speed, Nicole ordered, and send a message to Admiral Frost. He needs to know about this. The USS Horizon arrived at the coordinates to find a small Vexari science vessel being fired upon by a larger Vexari ship. The science vessel was already badly damaged. Hail both vessels, Nicole commanded. The screen flickered, showing a Vexari face. It was Crenmore, the scientist from the cultural exchange. Captain Frost, we require assistance, Crenmore said. His usual flat tone had a slight urgency to it. We are conducting approved research. The attacking vessel belongs to a faction that opposes our work. We'll protect your vessel, Nicole assured him. USS Horizon to attacking Vexari ship. Cease fire immediately, or we will be forced to defend the science vessel. The only response was another blast aimed at Crenmore's ship. Shields up, target their weapon systems only, Nicole ordered. Fire when ready. The USS Horizon moved between the attacking ship and the science vessel, absorbing several hits meant for the smaller craft. They returned fire, disabling the attacker's main weapons. The attacking vessel is retreating, Captain, the tactical officer reported. Good. Prepare a medical team. We're going to board the science vessel and offer assistance. Nicole led the away team herself. The science vessel was in bad shape, with several hull breaches and fires in the lower decks. They found Crenmore and his team in the main laboratory. Your arrival was timely, Captain Frost, Crenmore said. Several of our team require medical attention. As the human medics tended to the injured Vexari, Nicole looked around the laboratory. She noticed strange equipment and research displays showing Vexari brain scans. What exactly is your research, Crenmore? She asked. The Vexari scientist hesitated. It is sensitive information, but given your assistance, you deserve to know. He gestured to the displays. We are studying emotional restoration. Emotional restoration, Nicole repeated. Yes. For 20,000 years, our species has suppressed our emotional capacity through genetic engineering. Some of us believe this was a mistake. We are developing a treatment to restore what was lost. Nicole was surprised. Why would a faction oppose this research? They believe emotions make us vulnerable, weak. They fear what we might become if we regain what was lost. Before Nicole could respond, the ship shuddered violently. The attacking vessel had returned with reinforcements. We need to evacuate now, Nicole shouted as a console exploded nearby. "This vessel won't survive another attack." As they hurried to evacuate the Vexari scientists, another explosion rocked the ship. A support beam broke loose, falling toward Crenmore. Without hesitation, Nicole pushed him out of the way. The beam struck her instead, pinning her to the floor. Pain shot through her body. She could feel that her ribs were broken and something warm was spreading across her side. Blood. "Captain!" her security chief shouted, rushing to her side. "Get everyone else out first," Nicole ordered through gritted teeth. The Vexari scientists watched in confusion as the human crew worked desperately to free their captain. Tears streamed down the faces of several crew members as they lifted the heavy beam. "Why do they leak fluid?" one Vexari scientist asked Crenmore. "They call it crying," Crenmore explained. "It is an emotional response to distress or pain. Yet they continue to function despite this response? Indeed. It does not seem to impair them as we had believed." Nicole was carefully placed on a stretcher. Despite her pain, she remained conscious, giving orders and asking about the status of the evacuation. "Is everyone safe?" She asked her security. "Chief, all Vexari scientists accounted for, Captain. We're the last ones out." As they carried Nicole to the transport, Crenmore walked alongside. "You were injured saving me," he stated. "This was not a logical action. I am not more valuable than you." Nicole managed a weak smile. "That's not how we make these decisions." "How then?" "We just care," she whispered. Back on the USS Horizon, the medical team rushed Nicole to sickbay. Her injuries were severe: 4 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and internal bleeding. Her crew gathered outside sickbay, waiting for news. Many were crying openly. Crenmore observed this with growing curiosity. He had been studying human emotions for months now, but seeing them displayed so rawly was different from reading about them. "Your captain may die," he said to Nicole's first officer. "Yet you continue to shed tears rather than prepare for new leadership." "We're doing both," the officer replied tersely. "We can feel and function at the same time." Later, as Nicole was stabilized in surgery, Crenmore sat alone in the guest quarters assigned to him. He felt strange. His heart rate was elevated, his thought patterns were disrupted, and most disturbing of all, his vision was blurring with moisture. He touched his face and looked with shock at the wetness on his fingers. A tear. His first tear in a lifetime of emotionless existence. The experimental treatment they had been, developing on the science vessel, he had tested it on himself. And now, confronted with Captain Frost's selfless act and her crew's emotional response, something long dormant had awakened within him. For the first time in 20,000 years, of Vexari history, one of their kind shed tears. 2 months after the attack on the Vexari science vessel, representatives from both species gathered on Earth for a historic meeting. The grand conference room of the United Earth headquarters in Geneva was filled with tension and anticipation. Admiral Alan Frost stood at the window, watching the Vexari ships land in the distance. His wife, Captain Nicole Frost, stood beside him. She had recovered from her injuries, though she still moved carefully. "Are you ready for this?" he asked her. "As ready as anyone can be to change the course of galactic history," she replied with a small smile. The doors opened and the Vexari delegation entered. Leading them was not the expected High Council representative, but Crenmore. He looked different somehow. His movements were less rigid, his eyes more focused. Behind Alan, Dr. Paul Harris and Lieutenant Olivia West exchanged significant glances. They had spent the last 2 months studying the Vexari Emotional Restoration Project and sharing their findings with Earth's leadership. "Welcome to Earth," Alan said formally. "We are honored to be here," Crenmore replied. His voice had a subtle inflection that had never been present before. "I speak today not just as a scientist but as the new appointed representative of the Vexari Reformation movement." Murmurs spread through the human delegation. This was unexpected. The attack on our research vessel was not an isolated incident, Crenmore continued. It was part of a larger conflict within our society. A conflict that has been hidden for many years but can no longer be contained. He gestured, and one of his assistants activated a holographic display. It showed ancient Vexari art, music notations, and what appeared to be poetry. 20,000 years ago, our species made a choice, Crenmore explained. After a devastating war that nearly destroyed our civilization, our ancestors believed that emotions were the root cause of our suffering. They developed genetic modifications to remove emotional capacity from future generations. The room was silent, as everyone absorbed this revelation. For 20,000 years, we have lived without joy, without love, without grief. Crenmore continued. We believe this made us stronger, more advanced. We looked at species like yours and saw your emotions as evolutionary weaknesses. He paused, looking directly at Captain Nicole Frost. We were wrong. Nicole met his gaze, remembering how she had pushed him out of the way of the falling beam, how she had seen the first tear form in his alien eye as she lay injured. Our species has been slowly declining, Crenmore revealed. Our birth rates are falling. Our technological advancement has plateaued. Despite our longer lifespans, we are creating less, discovering less, becoming less. He walked to the center of the room, commanding everyone's attention. When we first encountered humans, we saw your tears as a biological defect. When Officer Daniels cried after learning of her father's death, we could not understand how such a response could benefit a species. Lily Daniels, standing near the back of the room, remembered that moment vividly. When your rescue teams on Proxima IV risked their lives to save Vexari children they had never met, we calculated it as an inefficient risk assessment, Crenmore continued. When Captain Frost pushed me out of the path of danger, taking the injury herself, our logical framework could not explain her action. He touched his face, a gesture that seemed almost human. But something changed in me that day. The experimental treatment we had developed was working. I felt concern, then gratitude, then something more profound as I watched her crew weeping while they worked to save her. Crenmore looked around the room, making eye contact with several humans. For the first time in 20,000 years, a Vexari shed tears. I shed tears, and in that moment, I understood what we had lost. The room was completely silent. We mocked what we did not understand, Crenmore said softly. We saw weakness where there was strength. Human tears are not a defect, but a gift. They are the physical manifestation of your greatest evolutionary advantage. He activated another holographic display, showing brain scans. Our research has confirmed that emotions do not impair rational thought as our ancestors believed. Rather, they inform it. They provide context, motivation, and meaning. Without them, we became efficient but empty, advanced but stagnant. Alan stepped forward. What exactly are you proposing, Representative Crenmore? A new alliance, Crenmore replied. Not one that requires humans to change, but one that helps Vexari remember what we once were. The Reformation movement has grown quickly. Many of our people sense the emptiness in our existence. They want change. And the opposition? Olivia asked. The faction that attacked your vessel? They fear what they do not understand, Crenmore acknowledged. But they are a minority. As more Vexari undergo the restoration treatment and experience emotions again, support for our movement grows. He straightened, his posture now more relaxed and natural than any Vexari they had seen before. We withdraw our condition that humans undergo emotional regulation. Instead, we ask for your help in safely restoring what we lost. Your scientists, your artists, your teachers, we need them all to remember how to feel. The human delegation exchanged looks of surprise and hope. 1 month later, a permanent human embassy was established on Takaris Prime. Dr. Paul Harris was appointed as lead ambassador, with Lieutenant Olivia West as his deputy. Their mission was to help the Vexari safely reintegrate emotions into their society. The process was not always smooth. Some Vexari had adverse reactions to the treatments. Others struggled to cope with feelings they had never experienced before. A small faction still resisted the change, warning that emotions would lead to chaos and conflict. But slowly, Vexari society began to transform. Colors appeared in their architecture. Music could be heard in public spaces. Vexari began to form family bonds and raise their own children rather than sending them to communal education centers. 6 months after the treaty signing, Lily Daniels, now a senior diplomat, visited a Vexari school. Unlike the sterile education center she had seen before, this one was filled with color and movement. The young Vexari still learned with remarkable efficiency, but they also played, laughed, and sometimes cried. She watched as a young Vexari child fell and scraped its knee. The child's face contorted in pain, and tears formed in its large black eyes. The parent, rather than ignoring this display, knelt and gently wiped the tears away with a gesture clearly learned from humans. "We have much to learn from each other," the Vexari parent said, noticing Lily's observation. "But now, at last, we can truly understand." Lily smiled, thinking of how far both species had come. From that first diplomatic meeting where her tears had been seen as a defect, to this moment where tears were recognized as a precious connection between thinking beings. In his office on the USS Solaris, Admiral Alan Frost received the final report from the Vexari Reformation Commission. The genetic treatments had been successfully administered to over 70% of the Vexari population. Their society was changing rapidly but peacefully. "They judged us too quickly," Nicole commented, reading the report over his shoulder. "They thought our emotions made us weak." Alan nodded. "And in the end, it was our tears that saved them." He looked out at the stars, thinking about the strange journey that had brought two very different species to this point of understanding. "Maybe that's what exploration is really about," he said quietly. "Not just finding new worlds, but new ways of seeing our own." Nicole took his hand, and together they watched as a Vexari ship and a human vessel departed the station side by side, heading out to explore the galaxy together.